Here's Rand Paul. This is a guy who made up his own credentials to be an optometrist, right? Or an ophthalmologist. I once bought a tree from a guy, peach tree. It was not a hybrid, he told me. It's from very hard to get, apparently. And then he says, is that your car? I'm like, yeah. It's like, I don't know, it's like a 5, 6-year-old, 10-year-old Subaru. I don't know at the time. He says, you own that? And I'm like, yeah. And he goes, no, you don't. I'm like, I don't. Yeah. He goes, no, you lease it from the state. I'm like, okay. And he goes, you think you're a citizen of the United States? No. Yeah. He goes, yeah, you're not. You're a citizen of New York State. He was a big Ron Paul fanatic. But here is Ron Paul's son questioning Dr. Fauci's recommendations to stem the COVID spread.
Given that no...
Oh, what's going on?
Studies have shown significant numbers of reinfections of patients previously infected or previously vaccinated. What specific studies do you cite to argue that the public should be wearing masks well into 2022?
I'm not sure I understand the connection of what you're saying about masks and reinfection. We're talking about people who have never been infected before.
You're telling everybody to wear a mask, whether they've had an infection or a vaccine. What I'm saying is they have immunity, and everybody agrees they have immunity. What studies do you have that people that have had the vaccine or have had the infection are spreading the infection? If we're not spreading the infection, isn't it just theater?
No, it's
not.
not.
The vaccine and you're wearing 2 masks. Isn't that theater?
No, that's not. Here we go again with the theater. Let's get down to the facts. Okay, the studies that you quote from Crotty and Sete look at in vitro examination of memory immunity, which in their paper they specifically say this does not necessarily pertain to the actual protection. It's in vitro.
And what studies can you point to that show significant reinfection? There are no studies that show significant
let me finish the response to your question, if you please. The other thing is that when you talk about reinfection and you don't keep in the concept of variants, that's an entirely different ballgame. That's a good reason for a mask. In the South African study conducted by J&J, they found that people who were infected with wild type and were exposed to the variant in South Africa, the 351, it was as if they had never been infected before. They had no protection. So when you talk about reinfection, you've got to make sure you're talking about wild type. I agree with you that you very likely would have protection from wild type for at least 6 months if you're infected. But we in our country now have variants that are circulating.
Significant reinfection.
So he's hung up on the study about reinfection there, right? That's what he's trying to hammer Fauci on, as if there isn't significant evidence that you can get reinfected by COVID-19.
Well, no, I mean, what Fauci is saying, there's 2 things. One is Fauci saying that the study that he is citing is not the study that he thinks it is. And so then Paul is saying, well, then show me a study that says that you can get reinfected. And Fauci's point is this, is that it is likely that if you have and look, there's so much they don't know. Right. So there, people are being cautious, and
I know someone who's been reinfected.
Right. Well, but you want to err on the side of being safe. But the Fauci is saying it is likely that, not 100%, it is likely that if you have been infected, that you will have immunity for 6 months. Likely, and it's also a function of just how seriously you were infected, et cetera, et cetera. It is also even more likely that if you have been vaccinated, you will also have immunity. But what he's trying to make clear is that there are multiple types of COVID-19 that exist now in the world. There is the wild type, which is the kind that we initially were dealing with. Now in this country, we're seeing rises from what is the B117 variant that was first recognized in the UK. But there's also a variant in South Africa that is even more onerous, if you will. Can't remember the name of the of that variant. And what Fauci is saying is that to use the word reinfection is incorrect, because you are talking about being reinfected by the wild type. He says it's likely that you cannot be reinfected or will not be reinfected by the wild type, but it is definitely possible that you be reinfected, or you will not be reinfected because you will be infected for the first time by a COVID variant that is a variant of COVID. So we refer to it that way. But maybe for idiots like Rand Paul, you need to call it something completely different. But you are, in a way, calling it something different, but it's just not big enough. So maybe you just call it Crovid or COVID or something like that. So he can't get up there and say you're being reinfected. I mean, the point is, until we get fully vaccinated in any society, and then even like then, it's really the world, you're going to want to err on the side of caution. There is no doubt that there is a chance that in a year or two, they're going to look back and say, this thing that we did to protect ourselves turned out to be irrelevant. I mean, I still remember early on, maybe this time last year, looking at a video where a doctor, it was spread around on social media, a doctor was like giving like very explicit directions to not touch your face, to not touch your eyes, to not rub your eyes, and, saying like, you don't have to worry when somebody comes to your door, because as long as you wash your hands. I mean, I just remember, I can't remember the specific, I remember those moments, and it turned out totally wrong, that touching stuff, short of someone like licking this microphone and then me coming by and licking the microphone, moments later.
Lovely image, Sam.
Yes.
Thank you.
I mean, it happens.
I mean, we do that every day at work, but
we do that all the time at work, but we just make sure that we're staying with our own microphones.
Yeah.
But I will not get it. And we were fortunate on this program. We had two epidemiologists who came on, by April, who were like, I think it's air. I think the three things that you have to worry about are air, and air, I think was the quote. And it turns out to be that way. But they still don't know what's up with SARS. They still don't know what's up with any of it. I mean, the bottom line, the one thing, and this is the thing that I spoke to David Wallace Wells about this for that interview show I'm doing for Peacock. It came down to, we needed to react quicker. If we wanted to stem this, we needed to react it quicker. And now all we're doing in many ways is just bailing water. But the amazing thing to think about is the 1918 pandemic, 55 million people died. And 675,000 of those died in this country. Now, granted, our population was probably a third of what it is today, but we're gonna break 600,000 in this country, no doubt, no doubt. Maybe even 650, 700. So when you compare the deaths in this country in the 1918 pandemic relative to today, travel's different. There's a lot of different factors, but we failed very early on, and it's very much a situation of like, we're shutting the barn door after the cows have been let out, and we're just doing our best. And that Rand Paul is up there is just sort of indicative of the entire libertarian mindset of this. It is a religion, and it is really just like you have to prove that on some level, like all of these other resources are there's a conspiratorial aspect, right? Like,
he's also deeply insecure about his lack of medical acumen, and that like manifests itself in this bizarre way with Fauci, where he has to be performative. Fauci's got to move in and be his other next door neighbor, just like they've got to squash this beef in some old school Fight Club way.
Exactly.
They're both smaller in stature, but I'd take Fauci, even though he's got a few years on
Well, I
Rand
like
Paul
the
any day.
version of Fauci that doesn't have to worry about Donald Trump when he talks to these senators at this point.
Fauci Unchained.